My family called my life's work a hobby and stole it, so I embedded a secret code that destroyed their reputation. Can you imagine pouring your soul into something for a decade? Not for a job, not for money, but for the pure, quiet joy of creation. Can you imagine it being the one thing in the world that feels truly and completely yours? Now, can you imagine your own family looking at your masterpiece, calling it a cute little hobby, and then stealing it to feed their own desperate need for applause? Because that's what my family did to me. My name is Lena. I'm 36. I'm a senior software engineer living in the sprawling, manicured suburbs of Northern Virginia, and this is the story of how my family's obsession with appearances forced me to burn their world to the ground with the only weapon I had: the truth. In my family, success isn't something you achieve, it's something you perform. We were the Hartwells, and our lives were a carefully curated stage play. My father, Richard, was the charismatic visionary, a man who spoke of billion-dollar ideas and disruptive paradigms, but whose actual career was a string of quiet failures he papered over with expensive suits and a booming voice. My mother, Susan, was his producer and publicist, a woman whose primary function was to maintain the illusion of prestige, her social calendar a strategic campaign. And my older brother, Ethan, was the leading man, charming, handsome, and utterly allergic to hard work. He was the idea guy, a title that required no actual output but got him endless praise. And me? I was the stage crew, the quiet, overlooked technician working in the dark. While they were busy performing success, I was quietly achieving it. I got the computer science degree from Carnegie Mellon. I got the high-paying job at a defense contractor. I bought my own sensible townhouse in a sea of their rented McMansions. But in the Hartwell family narrative, my accomplishments were footnote-worthy at best. They were boring. They were practical. There was no performance, no spectacle. My stability was a quiet reproach to their chaos, so they simply chose not to see it. It was a deep, fundamental psychological wound I'd lived with my whole life. The knowledge that nothing I did would ever be as impressive as something my brother simply said he was going to do. For the last 8 years, I had a secret. A passion project I worked on late at night, after my demanding day job, fueled by coffee and a quiet, obsessive love. I called it Aura. It was a genealogy platform, but on a level no one had ever seen. I wrote a proprietary AI that didn't just pull from census data and birth certificates. It cross-referenced public records, newspaper archives, social media, property deeds, and even sentiment analysis from digitized letters to build an immersive, multidimensional story of a family. It could find a forgotten Greytant's high school poetry or a great-grandfather's failed business venture from a 1920s newspaper ad. It was my art. It was my soul translated into code. I finally finished a fully functional beta. I was proud, in a way I'd never been proud of anything. And I made a mistake. A catastrophic, life-altering mistake born of a deep, childish longing to finally be seen by them. I decided to show it to my family. It was a Sunday dinner. The stage was set as always. My mother's too-perfect table setting, my father holding court about a new crypto venture that was guaranteed to pop. I waited for a lull in the performance. I actually have something to show you guys, I said, my voice feeling small in the cavernous dining room. It's the project I've been working on. I pulled out my laptop. I logged into Aura. The interface, clean and minimalist, glowed on the screen. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. This was undeniable. This was real. This was something I had built. What's this? Another one of your little computer games? Ethan asked, barely looking up from his phone. It's a genealogy platform, I said, my throat tightening. It's different. I typed in my mother's maiden name, Donovan. The AI word to life. A beautiful, branching family tree began to populate the screen. But it was more than that. Portraits faded in, timelines scrolled, and little story modules appeared. There was a link to a digitized newspaper clipping about my grandfather winning a state fair baking competition in 1958. There was a map showing the path my great-grandmother's family took from Ireland to Ohio. For the first time all night, the table was silent. My father leaned forward, his eyes wide. My mother put a hand to her mouth. Ethan actually put his phone down. My God, my father breathed. Lena, what is this? It's Aura, I said, a stupid grin spreading across my face. I couldn't help it. They were seeing it. They were finally seeing me. This is it, my father said, not to me but to Ethan. His eyes were gleaming with a manic energy I knew all too well. It was the look he got right before he launched a new, doomed venture. This is the one, E. This is the big one. Ethan was staring at the screen, a slow, greedy smile spreading across his face. This is better than Ancestry, better than 23andMe. This is a story-selling machine. The next hour was a blur. They bombarded me with questions, not about the code, not about the years of work, but about the monetization strategy and market viability. It was all business talk, a language I spoke but had intentionally kept separate from my art. "We can help you with this, Lena," my father said, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You're the tech genius, we get that. But you need business minds to take this to the next level. Ethan can be the face of the company. I'll handle the investors. We'll be a team." The Hartwell family finally makes its mark. My mother was beaming. "Oh, Lena, this is wonderful. Your father and brother, working together. This will finally give them the success they deserve." Them, the word hung in the air. The old, familiar freeze response kicked in. My mouth felt dry. My chest was tight. A little voice in the back of my head was screaming, "And oh, this is yours. Don't do it." But the desire to finally be part of the performance, to be seen as valuable, was a powerful drug. For one night, I wanted to be on the stage with them, not in the wings. "We'll need the source code, of course," my father said casually, as if asking for the salt. "And all your research, the database architecture, everything. We need to see what we're working with to build the business plan." My mouth said yes. My mouth said, "Okay, I'll send it over." But every cell in my body was screaming. I went home that night, and in a fit of what I can only describe as hope-induced madness, I transferred the entire project repository to a shared Dropbox folder. I felt sick doing it, but I told myself this was what it felt like to be part of a team, to be part of the family. I had no idea I was just handing them the knife they would use to cut me out completely. The silence started almost immediately. A week went by. I texted the family group chat. "Any thoughts on the business plan?" My mother replied with a photo of a new hydrangea bush she'd bought. 2 weeks. I called my dad. "Big things are happening, Lena," he boomed. "Huge things. We're in the quiet phase right now. Need to protect the IP. Trust the process." I started hearing about meetings I wasn't invited to. "Just preliminary investor outreach," Ethan told me, his voice slick and evasive. "Boring stuff, you'd hate it." I felt a cold knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I was the overlooked achiever my whole life, but this felt different. This was a deliberate, calculated exclusion. The gaslighting phase began in earnest about a month in. I drove to my parents' house unannounced and found them in the kitchen with Ethan, huddled around a new laptop, looking at what was unmistakably my app's user interface. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why wasn't I invited?" My mother jumped, startled. My father composed himself instantly, his face settling into a mask of paternal disappointment. "Clara, we were just brainstorming. You can't be so emotional about every little thing. This is how business works." "I'm not being emotional." I shot back, my voice rising despite myself. "You're cutting me out of my own project." "Nobody is cutting you out," Ethan said, rolling his eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. We're trying to build $1 billion company here, and you're worried about not being invited to a brainstorming session? You need to see the bigger picture. And you need to respect that your father and brother have expertise in an area you don't," my mother added, her voice sharp. "You built a cute hobby, Lena. They're turning it into an empire. You should be grateful." A cute hobby. The words hit me with the force of a physical slap. 8 years of my life, my heart, my soul, a cute hobby. The room spun. I felt a wave of dizziness, and I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. I was starting to feel crazy, like I was the one who was wrong. My anger felt illegitimate, my hurt a sign of my own weakness. It was a classic scapegoating tactic. Frame the victim's valid reaction as the actual problem. I left their house that day feeling smaller and more confused than ever. I went home and did what I do best. I started digging online. It didn't take long. A quick search of the Virginia State Corporation Commission's public database gave me the answer. A new LLC had been registered 2 weeks prior. Aura Innovations Incorporated. The registered agents were Richard Hartwell and Ethan Hartwell. My name was nowhere. The betrayal was so absolute, so brazen, it took my breath away. They hadn't just stolen my idea, they had stolen its name. They had incorporated without me. They were building a company around my work and erasing me from its history before it even began. I spent the next few days in a spiral of grief and rage. The hurt was a physical thing, a constant pressure in my chest. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying that Sunday dinner in my head. My desperate need for their approval. My weakness in handing over my life's work. How could I have been so stupid? So naive? I had ignored every red flag, every warning bell my gut had screamed at me, because I wanted to believe, for once, that they saw me. The final public blow came via an email. Not to me, but forwarded from a former colleague. It was a sleek, professionally designed invitation. Aura Innovations Incorporated cordially invites you to the exclusive launch and live demonstration of Aura, a revolutionary platform poised to change the way we connect with our past. Join us for a night of innovation and celebration. The event was in 2 weeks, at a swanky hotel ballroom in Tyson's Corner. The invitation included a link to a slick new website, aurainnovations.com. It was full of my design elements, my language, my vision. And at the bottom, under our team, were glossy professional headshots of Richard Hartwell, CEO, and Ethan Hartwell, Chief Visionary Officer. I wasn't just erased. I was replaced. They had taken my soul and put their smirking faces on it. That was the end of the grief. The end of the self-doubt. The sadness was burned away by a pure, white-hot fury. I finally understood. They didn't just want my work. They wanted my life. They wanted the success I had built for myself, and they were willing to destroy me to get it. I confronted them that night. I walked into my parents' house without knocking. They were in the living room, celebrating with champagne. The bottle was sweating in a silver bucket. They looked up, their smiles fading. "The launch party," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You're launching my app without me." My father stood up, his face hardening. "It's not your app anymore, Lena. It's the company's app. And you chose not to be a team player." "I chose." I laughed, a horrible, broken sound. "You stole it. You stole everything." And then the mid-story twist, the truth that laid their rotten motivations bare, finally came out. It came from my father, his voice trembling with a lifetime of resentment and failure. "You think you're so much better than us, don't you?" He spat, his face contorted in a sneer. "With your fancy degree and your big, important job. You just had to go off and be successful all on your own. You didn't need us. You built this thing in secret, hiding it from your own family. You abandoned us, Lena. You abandoned the family team." I stared at him, my mind reeling. Abandon them? I had co-signed for their car leases. I had given them loans I knew I'd never see again. I had been their silent, reliable safety net for a decade. "This was our chance to be a family again," he yelled, his voice cracking. "A chance for me and your brother to finally get the win we deserve. And you were trying to keep it all for yourself. We're not stealing from you. We're taking back what should have been a family project from the start." And there it was. This wasn't just greed. It was revenge for a perceived abandonment. In their twisted worldview, my independent success wasn't an achievement. It was an act of betrayal. My quiet competence was an insult to his loud failures. He didn't want to build something with me. He wanted to take what I had built to heal his own wounded pride. He needed to be the hero of my story. "You are pathetic," I said, the words falling from my lips cold and heavy as stones. I walked out. I knew I would never speak to them again. But I wasn't going to just disappear. They wanted a performance. They wanted a spectacle. I was going to give them one they would never forget. Because I had a secret of my own. Back on that night when I'd copied my code to their Dropbox, a small, cold part of my brain, the engineer's brain, the part that always plans for system failure, had taken over. I had forked the repository. To their folder, I sent the pristine, perfect version of my app. But in that version, I embedded a little something extra. A logic bomb. A series of deeply buried subroutines that would lie dormant, completely invisible to any cursory code review. A digital dead man's switch. The code was designed to trigger under a very specific set of circumstances that I knew would precede any launch. A public demonstration, connected to the internet, using a specific presentation software. And one final, crucial condition. The very first search query had to be Hartwell. I knew my father's ego. I knew that in his moment of triumph, he would start with his own story. The logic bomb wouldn't crash the app. It wouldn't display an error. That was too simple. My code was designed to do what I had always intended, to tell the whole, immersive truth. It would just expand the definition of public records to its most ruthless, comprehensive conclusion. The night of the launch party, I didn't go. I sat at home in my quiet townhouse, wearing my favorite worn-out sweatshirt. I poured a glass of expensive whiskey, the kind my father always pretended to know about. On my main monitor, I had the live stream of the event, which they were broadcasting for international investors. On my second monitor, I had a backdoor terminal open, giving me a silent, real-time look at the app's processes. I watched them take the stage. My father in a new tuxedo, my brother looking slick and confident. They gave a speech full of buzzwords: synergy, paradigm shift, the future of legacy. They talked about the years of hard work and vision that had led to this moment. They never mentioned my name. Then came the grand finale. And now, my father boomed, his voice echoing in the ballroom, for the moment you've all been waiting for. My son, our chief visionary officer, Ethan Hartwell, will give you the first ever public demonstration of aura. Ethan took the keyboard, his face projected onto the giant screens flanking the stage. He had a cocky, self-satisfied smirk. To show you the true power of aura, he said, I'm going to start with the story that inspired it all. My own. He typed Hartwell into the search bar. My heart began to pound in my ears. In my terminal window, I saw the trigger condition being met. Initialize_truth_protocol. The bomb was live. On the screen, the family tree began to build, just as it had at my dining room table. The crowd murmured in appreciation. The music swelled. My father puffed out his chest. And then it began. The quiet takedown. Next to Richard Hartwell's name, a new module appeared. It wasn't a sepia-toned photo. It was a link labeled Business Ventures. Ethan, confused, clicked on it. A list populated the screen. Hartwell Innovative Solutions, LLC, dissolved 2008. Status, bankruptcy. Prestige Capital Ventures, dissolved 2012. Status, sued for non-payment by vendor. One by one, it listed every failed company, every lawsuit, every public lien filed against him for unpaid taxes. It pulled the data directly from state and federal court databases, presenting it in a clean, undeniable timeline. The crowd went silent. The murmuring stopped. People started looking at each other, their brows furrowed. Ethan, panicking, quickly clicked back. He navigated to his own profile. Ethan Hartwell. A module appeared next to his name, Educational History. He clicked it, probably expecting it to show the university he'd barely graduated from. Instead, it displayed his full, unedited transcript, which I had found in a box of old papers years ago and digitized. A 1.8 GPA. Academic probation. A link popped up next to it. Crowdfunded projects. It pulled data from GoFundMe and Kickstarter, listing his half-dozen failed campaigns. The revolutionary food truck, the disruptive clothing line, the travel blog. Each one showed the amount raised, a few $100s, and the status, project abandoned. The app was telling the truth. The raw, unglamorous, verifiable truth, using the very public records my family had spent their lives trying to hide. The performance was over. The stage had collapsed. On the live stream, I saw my brother freeze, his hand hovering over the mouse. My father's face, projected 10 feet high, had gone a sickly, mottled gray. He looked like he was having a heart attack. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a dead, heavy void where the applause was supposed to be. Someone in the audience laughed, a short, sharp bark that cut through the tension. Then another. People were pulling out their phones, recording the screens, the humiliated faces of my father and brother. My quiet takedown was complete. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't filed a lawsuit. I had simply let my cute hobby do what I designed it to do, reveal the truth. They had stolen my creation, and in their arrogance, they had pointed it directly at themselves. I closed my laptop. I took a sip of my whiskey. The burn felt good. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The investors, of course, vanished. The story, complete with cell phone footage of the disastrous demo, became a legend in the Northern Virginia tech and business community. My family became a social pariah overnight. The performance they had spent their lives cultivating was permanently, irrevocably canceled. I received a string of hysterical, abusive voicemails from my mother. I listened to the first one, then calmly blocked her number, my father's and my brother's. They were ghosts to me now. 2 days later, I got an email with the subject line, Aura. It wasn't from an angry investor. It was from the head of new product development at a major, publicly traded tech company that specializes in genealogy. Someone at the party had sent them the footage. They weren't interested in the family drama. They were stunned by the code. They called the Truth Protocol a brutally elegant solution to data verification. They wanted a meeting. It's been a year. I sold them the intellectual property for Aura, The real version, without the logic bomb, for a sum of money that still makes my hands tremble when I see it in my bank account. The money wasn't the victory. The victory was the validation. The recognition from my peers, from people who understood what I had built, was the approval I had been chasing my whole life. I don't live in Virginia anymore. I moved to a quiet town in the mountains of Colorado. I have a small house with a big deck where I can watch the sun set over the Rockies. I don't work for a defense contractor. I don't work for anyone. I'm taking my time hiking, learning how to paint, badly but joyfully. The wound of being the overlooked achiever, of feeling invisible in my own family, is finally starting to heal. I spent so many years believing my worth was conditional on their applause. That night, watching them crumble under the weight of their own lies, I realized I never needed them to see me at all. I just needed to see myself. I reclaimed my work, my name, and my right to define my own success. And the girl who coded in secret, hoping for a crumb of praise, is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her value, not because someone else told her, but because she built it herself, line by line. So I want to ask you all something. Have you ever had a passion, something you poured your heart into, that was dismissed or belittled by the people who were supposed to support you? How did you learn to cherish it for yourself, without their approval? Let me know your stories in the comments below. Reading them reminds me that we're all out here, quietly building our own worlds. And if you're interested in hearing more about building a new life from scratch, maybe consider subscribing. It would be nice to have you along for the journey.